It is 4:30. I will call the city council meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Kildee.
Here.
Councilmember Santangelo.
Here.
Councilmember Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mulchay.
Present.
Mayor Craven.
Here. This is the first item on the agenda is the closed session. I'll ask the city attorney to announce the reasons for going into closed session.
City attorney has to find his mute button. So we have one closed session. This is a conference with real property negotiator. The authority is government code section 54956.8. The property is the school property, which is located at 2222 Ventura Boulevard in Camarillo. The agency negotiators are listed in the agenda. The negotiating parties include Pleasant Valley School District. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment.
Are there any public comments on this particular item? I don't see any hands up. So I am assuming there are no public comments on this item. So with that, we will recess to a closed session.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just need to announce that I'll be recusing myself from the closed session. I have a conflict as my mother still holds a position on the board of Studio Channel Islands, which is a tenant at the school.
Okay. The rest of us will recess to closed session. And we will be back at 5 o'clock for our business meetings.
This is too dark. You're fucking dark. Do that. Oh boy.
Okay, it looks like it's 5 o'clock, so I will call to order the meeting of the Camarillo Library Board and let the record reflect that all trustees are present. And will you join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any public comments?
So we do have a member, they
I
just
saw a
lowered
hand.
their hand.
Okay, if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand again. Ah, there we go. Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes, and the timer is now up. And you can unmute yourself and go ahead and begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to ask a question. I think it's during the public comments at 7 o'clock about the development rights of Sterling Hills. I'm probably too early. I know you're talking about the library. I just wanted to verify that.
Yeah, you would come back at 7 o'clock and for public
Thank you.
comment. for a
Sorry,
non-
sorry to take your time up. Sorry.
It's okay. Okay, is there anybody else? All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to
Move
approve?
the approval.
Second.
Okay, I've got Mayor Craven with a motion and Vice Mayor Mulchay, Trustee Mulchay. With the second, can we have a vote?
Trustee Craven,
Yes.
Trustee Kildee,
Yes.
Trustee Mulchay,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Tremblay,
Yes.
President Santangelo.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
We'll move on to the update, and I believe Ms. Crosby is here to give a report.
So actually, I don't see her here.
Right.
Patricia is here.
Yep. She's
Yep.
on the panelist. Yeah.
Yep. Good evening, everybody. So just a brief update regarding curbside. Still very positive comments from the public, and we are still averaging in February about 154 pickups roughly a day. Beginning of the month, the beginning of the week on Tuesday is our first day of being open after the weekend. February 9th had the busiest day in February with 193 pickups. And the only other bit of information to share tonight is our director search is ongoing and continues.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here and updating us.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the staff?
No other comments.
Thank you. And comments from trustees? Go ahead, Mr. Kildee.
Thank you. Yeah, we're by far not out of the woods yet, but the numbers of the county are looking, we're definitely trending in a positive nature. Do we have any idea when we can perhaps consider reopening the library? Well, I'll leave it at that. Are there any updates on when potentially that may happen or potentially happen?
So yes, we have been tracking the numbers. They are tracking very well. As I've reported in previous meetings, we are hopeful that it would be within the orange tier that we might see a library reopening. And as the county is reporting, we could see that in just a matter of weeks ahead. And so in anticipation of this, I am working with, and staff is working with LS&S on reopening plans in various aspects of the operation and services, and just kind of what would be included within a reopening. So we are having those discussions, and so we're very hopeful that, you know, when the time comes, that we'll be in place to be able to reopen the library. I would also say that we are working with the other agencies throughout the county, so that we work in kind of so that the reopening occurs and we don't, any one of us, get out ahead of other agencies. There are some libraries that have opened in some limited way. And we're hopeful that when we reopen, it'll be kind of a meaningful reopening where there's more usage of the library and more ability to have access to the materials. So it's something that we are looking forward to, hopefully sooner than later.
I have a few follow-ups, if I may. Two, will the Friends of the Library be part of that equation? And the second question is, will we keep curbside pickup and delivery even when we have an opening, whatever that's going to look like, and whatever time frame that we can expect that to happen?
Yeah, so as far as the Friends of the Library is concerned, they are also very eager now to open and have an opening. They've been working on a COVID worksite plan that they've submitted to the county. It's been approved, and so they're working on their end to get things ready. And so we are in coordination with them as well. And then I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Curbside delivery. And
oh yes, so curbside, that is an element that we would anticipate the community would still be interested in continuing, and so we are looking at a plan that would have that continuing along, and would be a part of the reopening planning.
Thank you. That's all.
Any other questions? I have one, Mr. Thomas, if you'll pop back on. We received a letter from a resident, and I'm assuming it got passed on to you and even to Ms. Crosby. Can you just assure me that it was?
Yes, we did receive that letter.
Okay, I think she brings up some concerns that are worth exploring and paying attention to and seeing if we can do some improvements.
Yes.
Okay. If that's all, if nobody has any more comments, we'll go ahead and adjourn until our next meeting.
All right, we'll go ahead and convene this meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District regular meeting of the Board of Directors of March 24. Let the record reflect that all directors are present. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
No amendment.
All right, are there any public comments? I'm not seeing any public comments, Madam Clerk.
That's correct.
All right, let's see, we have 2 items on the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Director Mulchay and a second, I believe, by Director Kildee. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Craven,
Yes.
Director Kildee,
Yes.
Director Mulchay,
Yes.
Secretary Santangelo,
Yes.
Chair Tremblay.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any comments from staff?
No comment.
Do we have any comments from directors? I don't see any comments. Then we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District.
Call this meeting of the Camarillo Successor Agency, the special meeting to order, and ask the record to reflect that all council members are present. Are there any amendments to this agenda?
No amendment.
Public comments. Would any member of the public like to speak to us on an item on this agenda, the Camarillo Successor Agency? I see no hands up. So we will move on to the consent calendar.
Move consent.
Second.
The motion by Councilmember Tremblay, second by Vice Mayor Mulchay, to approve the consent calendar. Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Kildee,
Yes.
Councilmember Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremblay,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mulchay,
Yes.
Mayor Craven.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimous.
Are there any comments from staff?
No comment.
Comments from board members? Okay, this meeting of the Successor Agency is adjourned, and at the same time, I will call the Camarillo City Council back to order. Ask the record to reflect that all council members are present, and ask if there are any amendments to this agenda.
No amendment.
I'd like to pull something from the consent calendar.
Okay. What would you like to pull?
Item E, please. The
Library Services Agreement?
Yeah, I need some clarification.
Okay, let's put that under, well, we no longer have everything on here, but we'll use the city manager as a placeholder. How's that? Okay, anything else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just have a very short question on item H on the consent calendar. It's just a question. So when it's appropriate, I'd like to be able to ask it before I vote.
Okay, well, we're not quite there yet. This is just to pull stuff off or move it around. I'm going to ask the city attorney if he has a report on the closed session.
There is no reportable action from closed session.
Okay, thank you. Now, the consent calendar with the exception of item H, which has been moved to city manager, and Mr. Kildee has a short question on item H.
Yes, on item H, it's the portable standby generator. How long can we expect that to function at a high level?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Kildee. It really goes to the life expectancy of that type of equipment. And this standby generator is exactly that. It won't be used on a continual basis. It'll only be as needed. So life expectancy on those items are probably at least, I'm just going to ballpark it at least 15 years. Their maintenance will be performed as needed. It'll likely last much longer than that. We have an existing generator that we've had for way more than 15 years. That actually we're looking to replace in coming years also with a second. So we always have two. But anyway, these typically last a very long time, and with planned maintenance that we'll provide, it should serve us for many years to come.
Just a follow up, Dave, can it be upgraded as needed?
Not too sure what you mean by upgraded. Through maintenance, if there's a need for some replacement parts, or if there are any newer type of parts that are needed, of course, we would look into that. It's a pretty well standalone unit that's designed to, be taken wherever, to any of the well sites where we would plug it in to power our wells. So really don't foresee any need for any significant upgrades. It's a pretty straightforward piece of equipment.
Okay, and maintenance is fairly common on this, and it's not too complex?
Correct. Yeah, we already perform that type of maintenance now, and we'll continue that for this new piece of equipment.
Thank you.
Is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Madam Mayor, I would move that we approve items A through D and F through I respectively.
I'll second.
The motion is second to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item E, which has been moved to city manager. Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Kildee,
Yes.
Councilmember Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremblay,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Mayor Craven.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Next item on the agenda is public safety, particularly the 2020 California Unified Form Crime Report. Could we have the staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor Kildee. I'm sorry, Mayor Craven and Council. I am pleased to report on the 2020 crime statistics for the city of Camarillo. Can you tell me, Mayor, can you see my screen right now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So we'll get started on this. As you all know from past crime presentations that we've done, the Uniform Crime Report statistics are a reliable set of crime data that we provide and report every year to the FBI. They're tasked with collecting this data from all law enforcement agencies around the country and publishing the data. Uniform crime reporting offenses are categorized two ways. One is by violent offenses and the other is by property offenses. And so that's how the data will be reported to all of you this evening. The violent offenses consist of homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. And the property offenses are burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. This first slide is just a snapshot to show you all about the 30-year historical perspective for the city of Camarillo. The top line here represents property offenses, that's the lighter green, and the bottom represents violent offenses. And so you can see the trend line that's been inserted for both of these shows a steady decrease for the last 30 years in both property and in violent offenses. I shrunk it down here to show a 5-year perspective, a little bit more recent time period. And again, the trend line for both of these is that we've seen in the last 5 years, both property and violent offenses continuing to decrease. One of the things I'd like to point out about our uniform crime reporting statistics is that we always want to be careful when looking to compare our crime statistics to other jurisdictions nearby. I know it's very tempting to do to see how we rate as compared to some of the other cities around, but I want council to be careful in doing that because there's a lot of factors that affect crime rates in cities, from social trends and economic conditions, legislative changes, and that sort of thing. So one thing, we know those all have impacts in our local jurisdictions, but one thing that we will see recurring through this crime presentation is the effect and impact of the COVID pandemic that we have all been experiencing for the last year plus. Overall, I'd like to report that the UCR crime rate has fluctuated in that last 30 years, and that first chart represented it. We had a high of 32.5 crimes per 1,000 residents in Camarillo in 1991, down to 12.47 this year. Overall, this year compared to last year, we were essentially flat in our crime rate. This came on the heels of a 5% decrease in 2019 and a 27% decrease in 2018. Our total crimes per thousand of 12.47 compares to 12.52 last year. That really amounts to, just to show you how consistent we were this year, that's part one crime fewer this year than last year. So 877 last year compared to 876 this year. So very low numbers. And again, that 12.47 is the lowest we've had in 30 years in Camarillo. So as I mentioned, our 876 part one crimes was a decrease of 1. That breaks down though, as I mentioned, we look at this in terms of violent crimes and property crimes. So our violent crime rate was down to 0.75 crimes per thousand. We were at 0.83 last year. So we saw a 9% decrease in violent crime. Property is 11.71. It was 11.7 last year. So we saw a slight, just ever so slight uptick in property crimes. It actually amounted to 4 additional property crimes this year compared to last year. In 2020, Camarillo, City of Camarillo responded to, our police department responded to 17,874 calls for service compared to 17,935 in 2019. So when you're talking a number that great, it's essentially flat, but your deputies here are responding to about, just about 18,000 calls every year, which is a pretty high call volume. During the year, we made 3,358 arrests compared to 3,075 last year. So we saw a 9% increase. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of what you'll see here is COVID-related impacts. I've mentioned throughout the year that we reduced our populations in the jails in order to prevent COVID outbreaks in our jails. And so one of the things that we saw is for people who would normally be arrested and booked into jail, they were instead issued a misdemeanor citation and released right back onto the streets. And so we believe that that had a lot to do with the increase in arrests. And I'd like to point out on that arrests, of the 3,358 arrests, we had 412 people who were arrested 2 or more times last year. We had 13 people who were arrested 10 or more times. And we had 1 person who was arrested 27 different times last year. So a lot of our arrests come from repeat offenders. And counsel, at any time, if you have any questions, you can interrupt me and ask, and I will answer. It's just a graph here that breaks down our violent offenses and shows this year compared to last year. So you can just get kind of an idea, a real quick side-by-side comparison. When I said previously that we were essentially flat from last year to this year, you can see the only significant decrease we had was in the category of rapes, where we went from 22 to 16, which is a good thing. Robberies were up by 1. Some of the details on those offenses: robberies, our 5-year average is actually 25 robberies. So we're still well below the average. We did identify a fairly common trend in robberies, and that is that with the outlet stores and our big box stores, which is locations that we have a lot of arrests, we have crimes that start out as shoplifts that turn into robberies. And that happens when somebody who is going to be shoplifting an item is confronted by a loss prevention person, and then the thief actually uses force or fear to get away with the merchandise that they're trying to steal. So if a loss prevention person confronts them and they shove the loss prevention member out of the way, that becomes a robbery. Or if they make a verbal threat to them, that becomes a robbery. So 6 of our robberies started off as shoplifts. And interestingly enough, we had 3 robberies that involved a drug deal that went bad. Our 5-year average for rape is 16. And as I mentioned, we dropped from 22 to 16. So that is along the 5-year average for rape. Suspects were known to victims in all but 1 of the cases. And one of the trends we saw this year was that 4 of the cases involved social media being used to connect with the victim. Now, this is not to say that the person was lured in through social media. It might have been a consensual meetup on social media, but where the relationship started in 4 of those cases was through social media. And then our aggravated assault, the 5-year average is 40 assaults, and we're at half of that right now. So we're really quite low on our aggravated assault, which is a good thing. Here's a graph that breaks down our Part 1 property offenses. So you'll see we saw some decreases in residential burglary, and I'll talk about that in a minute. A couple of increases in commercial and in grand theft, decreases in petty theft. One of our most significant areas of increase based on percentages was motor vehicle thefts. And I'll give you some more explanation on that as we move forward here. As I mentioned again, you're going to hear this kind of similar refrain, but that our crimes were pretty consistent year over year across all of our categories. Interestingly enough, a couple of the trends we noticed, we had 15 reports of crew-type wallet thefts in our stores, and that's a crime where usually it's 2 to 3 people, and it involves making contact with a person who is inside a store and who they see maybe a purse present inside of a shopping cart, where one person will go and distract the person while their co-conspirator will come up and steal out of the purse. It's fairly common. We saw 11 package thefts. We saw 15 bicycle thefts and 10 mail thefts. Interestingly enough, on the package theft, we really expected that to go up in 2020 because of the pandemic and because of all the people who were getting items delivered to their house instead of going out and shopping. And that didn't materialize. In part, we think that might be because so many people were home during the day, where those opportunities for going up to an empty porch in an empty house and stealing a package just wasn't there. So we're pretty happy to see that we only had 11 package thefts because we really did expect that to go up. Organized retail theft crews with the outlets continue to be a problem. We've talked about this before. We know the outlets are a popular shopping destination for people, not just locals, but for people from out of town. And it's also a popular thieving destination for would-be criminals. And so we had 77 organized retail theft shoplifts in 2020. Now, one of the new tools we have to combat this, though, is the legislature passed a organized retail theft crime that makes it a felony now for people to act in conspiracy with one another to steal from multiple stores. So otherwise, if they stole less than $950 from the store, it's just a misdemeanor and they get a citation. But now if we can show them doing that from multiple stores and we can prove that conspiracy, it becomes a felony. So that's a nice prosecutorial tool and arresting tool that we can use for those who would come here to steal. I think you guys will remember me talking last year about one of the areas that increased significantly from 2018 to 2019, and that was in shoplifts. We saw an increase last year in 100 shoplifts over the 2018 numbers. And so one of our strategies for that is we focused a small 2-person directed enforcement unit to work primarily in the Ventura Boulevard corridor in the areas, the outlet mall and the box stores, the Home Depot and Target. And the focus or the main goal was for our 2 deputies to build relationships with the loss prevention people at each one of these individual businesses to make that line of communication much quicker, much more rapid, and much easier. And so they were able to do that. We've had a lot of success stories over the last year about how creating that new line of communication has enabled us to get our deputies out there much quicker and to either prevent or contact people before they went into the store, like known thieves, or to quickly apprehend them if they stole from the stores. And so in 2020, we had 50 fewer shoplifts compared to 2019. Now, I will say that we will contribute a lot of that to the pandemic because, as you all know, the outlets were closed for quite some time. So the opportunity just wasn't there for people. But we do know that the relationships we've been able to build with our direct enforcement unit have had a good benefit for us. I'd like to point out, I talk about the outlet malls being a great destination point for shoppers and shoplifters alike. In 2020, we had arrests at the outlets of 2 Camarillo residents, 2 residents from Lancaster, 4 from Canyon Country, 5 from Bakersfield, 5 from Los Angeles, 8 from Chile, 10 from Ventura, 12 from Northridge, and 22 from Oxnard. We also had 15 subjects who were arrested between 3 and 7 separate times for shoplifting. So we are able to identify who some of these people are. Now, the next iteration, I'll say, or evolution of our directed enforcement unit will be that we want to be able to identify these repeat offenders, these recidivist offenders, and target them proactively. So when they're put on probation because of a crime, if they've been here in Camarillo multiple times and they're stealing from our stores and victimizing our stores, we're going to go pay them a visit and do probation searches to make sure that they're complying with the terms of their probation or parole, whatever it might be, to let them know that, you know, Camarillo is not the place that they want to be doing business and coming to thieve and make victims of our businesses and our residents. I did talk about probably the single highest increase, and that is in stolen vehicles. I said we had 37% increase in those stolen vehicles. We have seen this throughout the county of Ventura. It's not just Camarillo that's experiencing this. It is all the agencies around the county. And interestingly enough, the thing I'd like to point out is that 37% of vehicles that were stolen in Camarillo were stolen because the owner either left the keys in the car or left a hide key in the car that were discovered and then used to steal the car. And so you'll see on our social media on Nextdoor, we're part of Ring Neighborhoods. We frequently put out messages on the 9 p.m. routine that talks about what we want people to be doing at night before they close up shop and go to bed. We want them to remove valuables from their cars. We want to make sure that cars are locked and that their outside lights are on. Just the typical, very simple crime prevention techniques that will stop things like, 37% of our vehicles being stolen with the victim's keys right in the car. We also see that in unlocked vehicles, where the overwhelming majority of our thefts from vehicles come from unlocked vehicles. They don't come from breaking the window or breaking into the car. And all you have to do is go to Nextdoor or the Ring neighborhood, and you'll see people posting videos of criminals going through the streets in the middle of the night, and they'll check door handles. And if one door is locked, they'll go to the next car. And so they're really crimes of opportunity that we as citizens and residents of Camarillo, we have a lot of responsibility, or we can really impact those numbers by just taking the simple steps of locking our cars and removing valuables from our cars. So that's a message we continue to push as often as we can. So that was a snapshot of the crime in Camarillo. Now I'd like to just give you all a summary of what each of our bureaus in the Camarillo Police Department did during the last year. As you all know, the Detective Bureau consists of a sergeant, 4 senior deputies, and 1 deputy, and they're responsible for investigating all crimes that occur in the city of Camarillo. They also investigate missing persons, runaways, and other non-criminal related incidents. Many of the cases that they get can be directly filed with the DA's office, so they don't always require a lot of follow-up. So, for example, a patrol arrest on a shoplift. Our patrol members pretty much do that entire investigation, and so our detectives, although we count that as a case, they just put together a case packet and file it with the DA's office. So in 2020, our detectives, they received 2,067 cases. Of those investigated, 1,137 were felony and 777 were misdemeanor crimes. 950 cases were closed. 830 of those were closed by arrest. The Detective Bureau is a very busy bureau. You can see with 5 investigators and that volume of crime. They wrote 111 search warrants during the same time period. So not only are they out there, trying to connect the dots, but they're out there digging for more evidence. They're writing search warrants for, if we identify a crook or a thief and we identify a location where they live, we will frequently write search warrants for their houses to try and go, recover stolen property for our victims. So our detective unit is extremely, extremely busy. A couple of cases of interest. We had a interesting burglary spree or burglary series in the spring of 2020 when we had a number of commercial burglaries where the front door was smashed and somebody went inside and stole things like cash, like lottery tickets, or other items from inside the business. And so, one of the first things we look for in any crime is video surveillance. And we ended up finding a couple of different locations that had video surveillance, but the video surveillance captured different aspects of the crime that was being committed. So in one video surveillance, we were able to clearly see a subject using what appeared to be a slingshot to break the window of the glass door. And once they broke that glass door, they entered the market and took cigarettes and lotto tickets. And they fled into an SUV that was captured on video and took off. Well, another video surveillance, we didn't capture actually the entry inside, but we caught a specific SUV that was driving around in the area prior to the crime occurring. So we were able to identify, our detectives worked diligently to identify a transient subject who originally was from Oregon and was currently residing out of the LA area, who'd come up here. And we connected him to 7 different burglaries in this spree of slingshot burglaries that was happening in Camarillo. So as I mentioned earlier too, some of the robberies we've had, 6 of them started from shoplifts gone bad. You'll see the second one here where I laid out one crime that happened in May of last year, where a couple of suspects headed up to the Vons in Mission Oaks, and they went straight to the champagne and wine aisle and started loading up champagne and wine into a bag. When the suspects went to leave the building, they were confronted by store employees. And when the store employee tried to take back one of the bags of alcohol, the subject shoved the employee, grabbed a bottle of wine, and threatened to hit the employee over the head with a bottle of wine in order to get out. And then another one of the suspects threatened or put their hand in their pocket to simulate a handgun. And so we were able to investigate that crime, and we identified a Los Angeles County resident, or 2 Los Angeles County residents, and made arrests on that. And they were actually linked once we discovered who they were and did a little bit more digging and investigation. We were able to link them to several crimes in Ventura County and down into LA County. And so they're awaiting trial on that case. But that's how a shoplift can turn into a misdemeanor shoplift can turn into a felony robbery. And it's quite dangerous. Most businesses have a hands-off approach where they might go confront them verbally, but don't ever try to get hands-on because it's kind of a dangerous situation that can turn bad. We also have the Special Enforcement Detail, which is a sergeant, a senior deputy, and 3 deputies and an administrative assistant. They're a plainclothes detail, and their primary responsibility is to investigate violent crimes, street gang activity, and street-level narcotics offenses. And then they'll take a special interest in our prolific offenders, our intelligence-led policing model to identify prolific offenders and target them. In 2020, our SED unit conducted 190 probation and parole searches that resulted in 134 different arrests. These guys were busy as well. They authored 136 search warrants and made a total of 249 arrests. One of the things that we're really proud of with this crew is that they seized 90 firearms during their investigations and thousands of rounds of ammunition. One of the things they do, because they are a plainclothes unit, is they do surveillances. And those surveillances tend to be long and drawn out. And so they did 100 different surveillances last year as well. So another very busy unit. You can see here, I've broken down the different types of arrests that they've made, primarily under the influence and drug-related arrests, but then that yield or lead to property crimes and weapons-related arrests as well. This is one arrest that we had last year where our detectives from SED, they had information that there was a resident here in Camarillo who was illegally manufacturing prohibited firearms. And so they did some investigation, they conducted some search warrant and some surveillance, and they obtained a search warrant for the subject's house. And when they went to the search warrant and made their way inside, this photograph here depicts the number of illegally possessed and manufactured firearms that they discovered at this person's residence. So this one investigation and arrest resulted in quite a few of those 90 firearms that they seized, but it's 90 firearms that are not on the streets here in Camarillo that we don't have to worry about getting in the wrong hands, so that's a good thing. We talk a lot about our community resource unit and how busy they are. I think they, in a normal year, they're probably the busiest unit we have at the station. Our community resource unit consists of our school resource officers. So we have 4 school resource officers, 1 for PBSD and 3 for the high schools at OUHSD. They investigate school-related crimes. They conduct a lot of counseling and a lot of mentoring. They do training of the school staff in certain types of drills, active shooter drills. They'll do threat assessments. If we get information that a student is making, threats or somebody's concerned, we'll do threat assessments on those students as well. The most important aspect of what these SROs do, though, has changed over the years. We used to 20 20 years ago when we started these SRO programs, it was heavily focused on enforcement. And now I would say it's heavily weighted towards mentoring and developing of students. I talk to our SROs quite often, and it's really neat to hear the stories about kids who come up to them and ask them about career advice. You know, one of our SROs was formerly in the Navy. And when they're introduced at the beginning of the year, they give a little biography of themselves. And he's had a couple of students who came up to him, and this is our SRO out at Frontier High School. He's had a couple of students who come up to him who are really interested in what he does and what his early history was. And they've sought out his advice and his opinion on career moves. So this happens a lot. We have parents who will call our SROs when they have some issues with, you know, with one of their children, that, you know, they see a child who might be going down the wrong path. They'll call our SROs for advice, and we'll do family mediations and counseling as well. And it's a really beneficial resource. I know OUHSD and PVSD superintendents and the principals of the schools and administrators there are really happy with the program and the partnership and what that program offers to the students. As you all know, when school was canceled last March, all of our high school SROs were moved back to patrol because we had no students in school. So they've been working out in patrol for the most of the last year, with the exception of the Pleasant Valley School District SRO. He continued to work with the schools and do outreach with PVSD administrators for families that had kids who were not engaged in the school process. So one of the assistant superintendents and a deputy Espinosa would go together to make contact with families just to try and get children re-engaged, because it's that, you know, that early learning level that's so important, and we saw that engagement level falling off. So he's continued to work with the school even when COVID was going and school was not in session. When I talked about our resource unit, you know, another huge loss for us this last year was the volunteer groups. Our Explorer Post, you know, we have 12 kids under 21 who really, you know, they want to seek a career in law enforcement. And so we missed them almost all of last year. We had to cancel meetings once COVID really kicked off, and we have yet to start those meetings back up again. Same thing for our DART team and our Citizen Patrol. You all know, you've seen our Citizen Patrol out there. They are just such a valuable resource to us. They help out on traffic accidents. They do vacation house checks. They help out during special events for traffic control. They want to be back here working really bad, and we are excited for the day when we can bring them back. We're just not at that spot yet. So a lot of those things that we got from our volunteer groups last year really saw a big hit in the last 10 months of the year. Our youth officer, kind of a similar thing with him, the diversion program that he usually does, the parent and child counseling. He does, our youth officer also does the Citizen Academy. We were 2 sessions into a 12-week Citizen Academy when we had to cancel that. You know, the Coffee with a Cop. Last year, we were hoping to have a half a dozen Coffee with a Cop events, and our plan for last year was to have themed events. And we had our first domestic violence themed Coffee with a Cop down at Starbucks, and we had people from the new Justice Center, the Family Justice Center in Ventura, who were on hand with pamphlets and materials to just kind of share information about what they're all about. And we're really looking forward to that program of you know, specific Coffee with a Cop themes that we only had one of those. So we're really looking forward to, you know, kind of taking the lid off of things with our community resource unit next year and really starting to re-engage in person with the public as soon as it's safe to do so. And as you all know, you know, Project Hope continues to go strong. Last year, again, COVID affected last year. We had a number of our homeless people who really withdrew. They became so nervous and scared about COVID and about getting infected with COVID that they were not quite as outgoing as they normally are. They weren't as engaged with us as they normally are. They didn't want contact with us like they normally do. And so we saw a little withdrawing of that. Unfortunately, behavioral health pulled their 20-hour partner who rides with Deputy Dyer. They pulled him in March as well. He just started back up with us 2 weeks ago, Jose from behavioral health. So we're really happy to have him back, but that was a big loss for us last year. We were able to house a number of our homeless people during the COVID pandemic, get them a roof over their head in some of the local motels that have been contracted by the county. So we were able to get a roof over the head of some of them for at least part of the year. But that was impacted by COVID, just like everything else was impacted by COVID. So Deputy Dyer and Jose, like I said, they've been back at it for about 2 weeks now, and they're really out making contacts as people are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable in getting that vaccination and being, 2 weeks past the end of that second vaccination, people are getting a little bit more comfortable. We did not have a point in time count last year, so we're looking at the previous number of 30. That number it goes up and down. We know that we have different transients who will come into the area and who might be here for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then they'll move on to another area. But I mean, that's kind of the consistent baseline, but on any given day, we could have 5 or 10 more homeless people than what that number shows. One of the same problems, though, that we have all the time, COVID or not COVID, is the refusal of the offers for services. I would say we have about 90% of our homeless people who just don't want the assistance. There's one I've talked to a couple times in the last couple of weeks, and I'm trying, and she just is not interested in services. And so that's kind of one of the benefits of having Deputy Dyer and Jose work together, is that to build these relationships takes time. They don't trust us automatically, but over time, when we're persistent, we keep reaching out, we can start to build that trust. And so that's kind of one of the benefits of having Deputy Dyer, is he's persistent, and he's really great with people. And so he tends to build that trust quicker than some others do. Camarillo Traffic Bureau consists of a sergeant, a 1 senior deputy, 2 motorcycle deputies, 4 traffic enforcement deputies who just drive around in the black and white cars and do traffic enforcement and accident investigations, and then 20-hour cadets. So they write traffic citations, conduct enforcement, and they investigate all traffic collisions that occur within the city. They also respond to any traffic-related complaints. We have our abandoned vehicle hotline here at the police department that they respond to and handle those as well. The Camarillo Traffic Sergeant also manages our OTS grant, which results in a lot of additional income and additional operations that we can do here in Camarillo. We were able to do 1 DUI checkpoint last year before COVID stopped us in our tracks. But one of the things we're most excited about is we received that grant again from OTS, and we're having built right now is a DUI checkpoint trailer. And that's a trailer that will, normally when we do a DUI checkpoint now, we have to borrow a trailer from one of our other contract cities. Now we'll have our own trailer. It'll be equipped with a bathroom, a little command area. We'll be able to store all of our equipment there, and we'll be able to take that out on any operations that we conduct next year. So that should be completed in May of this year, and we'll be able to deploy it should we find that it's safe enough to start doing the DUI checkpoints again. This unit also conducts our driver safety classes, Start Smart, and the senior driving safety classes, both of which were canceled last year because of COVID. Our numbers looked really, really good last year. They were actually pretty good all around the county, but we saw significant decreases all across the board. Some of it was because, except for parking citations and traffic citations. That was kind of the one outlier here, is that, early in COVID, when all the businesses were shut down, we saw significant decreases in the volume of traffic on our streets, but we saw increases in the speeds. So where there are fewer cars on the road, it tends to speed things up. And so we wrote a lot of citations last year, hazardous moving violation citations, just because there were fewer cars in the streets and people were putting the pedal to the metal and driving a lot faster. So I think you'll see, though, that our fatal collisions and our injury collisions, everything was down significantly. And I think that increase in citations had an impact on that. So that concludes the units here. I just want to make a couple of talk about a couple of trends that we saw that I haven't already touched upon. One of them was residential burglaries. We are always in Camarillo a target for residential burglary crews that come up from Los Angeles. That's been decades long. They come and they target areas like Spanish Hills and places over on the east side of town as well. And so last year we saw the lowest number of burglaries we've had in 20 years in residential burglaries. And, we really think a lot of that had to do with the fact that people were home during the day. We had so many more employees who were working from home and teleworking instead of being at the office. And the majority of our residential burglaries are daytime burglaries. So they have people who will come up and knock on a door. And if nobody answers, then they go around the back door and they smash a slider and make entry into the house and steal items from inside the house. So we did see a decrease, although we did have that decrease. 15 of our burglaries, we believe, just simply based on the MO, were committed by burglary crews. And as I mentioned, they're generally from the LA area, but we also saw a trend that continued from last year where we have some South American groups that are coming up and conducting these residential burglaries. We also saw a trend that kind of continued from 2019 is that a number of the homes that were burglarized were backed up to open spaces. So it made entry into these and area to ingress these properties a little bit easier when you're backing up to an open space. Our commercial burglaries that we had, that was one thing where we did see some increases because, when you see fewer opportunities to do the retail theft, it's going to pop up somewhere else. And we did see some initial increases in commercial burglaries after the businesses closed down. Our commercial burglaries occurred, 11 of them occurred at restaurants, 6 at retail stores, 7 at liquor stores and gas stations, and 2 at pharmacies. It's interesting to note, though, how we categorize a burglary. We had a place over here near the police department, a pharmacy that was burglarized, and the suspects in that case went 2 businesses away from this business, and they went through the walls of 2 businesses to get into the pharmacy. Now that means that one crime is 3 different burglaries because they entered one with the intent to steal from the other, so that's what constitutes a burglary. So the numbers at times, based on how the criminals commit the crimes, can seem a little bit higher than they were, and that's certainly the case for commercial burglaries. And what do we do? What's our role in reducing crime and continuing enforcement? We have monthly crime control meetings where all of sheriff's commanders and captains who work at a contract city get together, and we discuss the crime trends that we're seeing in our jurisdictions the previous month or the previous weeks. And we talk about the strategies that we've employed. And so together as this group of, we have 5 contract cities, but we have a 6th station. So together with this group of 6 sets of managers, we kind of modify our best practices. If we're doing something that's working here, maybe Moore Park or Thousand Oaks, we'll try it over there. Or if they're doing something that we like and we think we can implement here, we'll steal that idea and make it work here. So we're putting a whole bunch of minds together because we do experience some of the same crime trends at our different contract cities. And it's kind of like a force multiplier for us to try and identify crimes and respond appropriately. We continue to increase our efforts in intelligence-led policing. And I've said this before, we really believe that about 10% of our crooks are responsible for 90% of the crimes here. We see it over and over and over. I told you about the one person that we've arrested 27 different times in Camarillo. So the intelligence-led policing model really focuses on identifying who those prolific offenders are. We really want to identify those 10% of the people and then target them. And if they're on probation and they're not complying with their probation terms, we want them to go to jail. And that's kind of the crux of that intelligence-led policing model. And so we're going to redouble our efforts with that this year. We were kind of stunted last year because, again, we were issuing cite and releases to avoid outbreaks in the jail. And we had a time there where we had 0 bail, so people that were being booked in were getting out very quickly, and that contributes to those repeat offenders getting arrested over and over. And then one of the other strategies is we're gonna continue with our directed enforcement unit, which is working out there in that Ventura Boulevard corridor, because as we know, the outlets are open again all of 2021. We expect to see those shoplifts back up, and so it's continuing with building those relationships, using technology to assist and benefit our deputies and to benefit the residents in Camarillo. We will be, as soon as we get our volunteers back, we're going to be using our volunteer resources to be extra patrolling eyes. They drive in a marked car, they have uniforms on, so the more eyes that people see out there, the less likely they're going to be out committing crimes. So we want to get them back out there, high visibility policing. We want to use some of those technology tools like ALPRs, automated license plate readers, Our community resource unit is working on an education campaign so that, for those who would come to local motels, who will stay and spend a weekend shopping out there, we want to educate them on what they should do with their property. If they're here for a Saturday and Sunday, we don't want them to leave all that property in their cars. We want them to take it out and put it in their rooms at night. So just more ways to prevent people from becoming victims of those crimes of opportunities. And then residential burglaries, as people go back to work, we expect that those will go up again. We really want our community resource unit to work with neighborhoods where we do see residential burglaries to educate them on prevention techniques. One of the things we mention a lot is the camera surveillance systems. I can't tell you how valuable those are and how often we're able to identify suspects because somebody has a set of cameras on their house. So our crime prevention unit and our community resource folks are really out there doing a lot of education for our residents. In school, once we return back to schools, we want our SROs on campus. They have a great relationship with the administrators there. They have a great relationship with the teachers and the students. And what we just saw in Boulder, Colorado, is all too familiar of a occurrence for us. And Saugus had a shooting here a year and a half ago, and this can happen anywhere. We had the Borderline shooting 2 years ago. This can happen anywhere, and so we want our SROs out there as a visible presence on campus, building relationships, and keeping that environment to be a safe place where teachers can teach and students can learn. So we'll continue doing that. We'll continue conducting active shooter drills and education at all of our schools as soon as we return in full force next fall. And then our traffic unit, we want to continue to use OTS grant money to benefit the city through distracted driving enforcement, and we have pedestrian and bicycle safety enforcement as well. Our DUI checkpoints, we really want to get those up and running again because we have seen an uptick so far this year in DUI arrests. So we want to continue with that. It seems like people are kind of loosening up on that. So we want to use that grant money from OTS to help offset those increases we've seen. And that concludes the crime presentation for this year. I just would like to point out that the Sheriff's Office really appreciates the relationship that we have with the city of Camarillo, and appreciate that council has prioritized public safety in Camarillo. And it's a testament to that is that this is where I live, this is where I raise my kids, and I wouldn't have them anywhere else in California because of your commitment to public safety in Camarillo. So we appreciate that. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent report. And what you reported was also excellent. A lot of good numbers there. Are there any questions by council members?
Madam
Mr.
Mayor?
Tremblay.
Yeah, Commander Tennyson, one question on the first of all, an excellent report, and thank you very much. And thank you for your service and all of the personnel in your office for their service. I was really interested in knowing the following. On the intelligence-led policing model with the intelligence-driven prosecution model, we've had a recent change in the district attorney's office leadership with Eric Nazarenko, who is also a career prosecutor, now the district attorney. Do you expect that same cooperation in terms of the intelligence-driven prosecution model paired with the intelligence-led policing model to continue?
Yes, it will continue. I've talked to the DA since he was appointed, and I've worked with him over the years. I happen to play basketball with him too, so I know him very well. He's very committed to being part of that, the team to reduce crime. And the intelligence-driven prosecution model, for those who don't know, it's paired up with ILP, in that when we do identify a prolific offender and we do have a case on them, oftentimes in DA's offices, that case could get handed off from DA to DA to DA. And the fifth DA in line who gets that case might not know that this guy's a prolific offender who has 4 or 5 other previous convictions or open cases. The agreement we have with the Ventura County District Attorney's Office is to have a prosecutor who's dedicated to intelligence-driven prosecution and working with our law enforcement agencies so that the offender in that case is prosecuted aggressively, because we know they have 5 other open cases in the previous year, or 5 or 6 convictions in the last couple of years. So it's a good model for when we do identify those 10% of crooks who commit 90% of the crime, to ensure that they're prosecuted the way that their actions deem necessary, I guess I would say. So yes, that is continuing, and we look forward to continuing to work with them on that.
Good, thank you, Commander. Yeah, that's the vertical prosecution model, correct?
Right. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, Commander Tennyson, thank you for an outstanding report. There's a lot of factors to crime, and I think you really spelled it out, how integrated it is for you and your staff to keep Camarillo extremely safe. I have a couple of questions. My first, is there any thought, I know through the years we've done, I believe it's somewhat under the community policing, where the police officers actually get out of their car and actually walk the city, and they kind of put a face, to who the police officers are. And I know in some localities they've done that, and it's been successful. And my understanding too, and I've seen them throughout time do this from time to time. Is there any thinking about, obviously when COVID comes to some sort of an end here, that we may be able to do something like that in our city?
That's a great question. We encourage our deputies to get out of their cars and interact with members of the public as often as we can. One of the things that I really I love doing, and I love encouraging our deputies to do, and seeing them do, and we've seen that prior to COVID, we saw a couple of instances that were posted on social media, and that is, when your deputy's driving in the neighborhood and he sees a little kid out shooting a basketball out in the street or in the driveway, pull over, go make a friendly contact with that young kid and shoot some hoops with him. Spend 5 or 10 minutes building a relationship. And it's those little 5-10 minute blocks of time building relationships that turns into a lifetime of trust relationship built between police and the residents that we serve. So that's one way that we do it. We encourage our people to get out of their cars as often as they can. We also like them, we have one SRO for K through 8 here, and we have a lot of schools, I think 20 some schools. So that one deputy, Deputy Espinoza, he cannot be at all those schools at one time. So that's another thing. We encourage our deputies, and I really try to focus it on our kids. They're young and they're impressionable, and they haven't all made up their minds yet. And so I ask our deputies to go take their lunch break at the school, go sit down and eat lunch with the kids when they're outside eating school, or if they see them kicking around the soccer ball on the playfield, go spend 10 or 15 minutes kicking around a soccer ball, and the kids just love it. I mean, they run up to our deputies and ask for stickers. It's a great way to build trust. And then we're going to work on rebuilding our beat coordinator program this year here in Camarillo, and that's a program where we assign specific deputies specific areas of the city that they're kind of responsible for, and we encourage them, if your area is the Ventura Boulevard corridor down in Old Town Camarillo, we're going to want the deputy to be a part of the meetings down there with the business association groups, to meet the business owners, to hand out business cards. And so they have a person that they can contact directly if they have issues that maybe don't require a call to 911 or sheriff's dispatch, but it's something that they need some law enforcement opinions on. And so that beat coordinator program, we're going to be kind of rebuilding that and rebranding that this year. And so that'll include, our county area as well, but it'll also include the city. And that's just another one of those ways where we can get out and have that face-to-face contact. So we recognize the importance of that, and we plan to continue doing some of the things we were doing pre-COVID, and then build upon some of those things as well.
Thank you. I just have one quick comment. I believe I read one report, Commander Tennyson, that I believe Camarillo ranks about 15th overall as the safest communities in California here. And if you could pass that on to your personnel down there, and also the residents of Camarillo that really have their eyes and ears open and really care about this community. I think that's a testament to that. And I know you don't seek the limelight on this, but if you could please pass that positive nature that this police department does for our city, I think that would be very beneficial. And I appreciate your report.
Thank you, and I'll definitely pass that on to our women and men who work out in the field, because they're the ones who do the good work. So I'll pass that on to them for sure.
Other questions? Mr. Mulchay.
Commander, thank you very, a really great presentation. I appreciate the analytics. I know you're a numbers guy. I really appreciate the numbers, and I appreciate the depth and the insight. Obviously, one theft on the top of everyone's mind right now is catalytic converter theft. I know you and I have spoken offline about that. Can you share any information as to what the department is doing? I know you guys had a special program you recently launched about that.
Yes, so catalytic converter thefts all over the country are out of control right now. I was back in South Dakota here a few weeks back, my home state, and they were having the exact same issue back there. We have this crime where the catalytic converter on the bottom of our vehicles is worth a lot of money. There's precious metals in there that people can get a lot of money for. And it's a crime where they're in and out in 30 seconds. We have videos from people's, Ring cameras that show they grab their battery operated Sawzall, they cut off each end of the catalytic converter, and they're back in their car and they take off, and they can make $500-600 on a catalytic converter. So it's a crime where they can do 3 or 4 or 5 in a night and make a lot of money. And they do it very quickly, and they do it at 4 in the morning when, there's not a lot of extra sets of eyes and ears out there. And so one of the programs that we're going to be launching here very soon, it's not a new thing. Catalytic converter things are generally cyclical, just like everything else. Back in 2009, we launched an etch and catch program here in Camarillo with one of the local mechanic shops, where we would etch the license plate number of the car onto the catalytic converter, and then we'd have a high temperature spray paint that we'd spray paint VCSO on there. And what that really does for us, it doesn't necessarily prevent the crook from coming and stealing it. What it does is it helps the law enforcement officer 2 cities away when they stop this car and they see all these catalytic converters, because if you don't have a crime to match the if you don't have a victim to match the catalytic converter to, you don't have a crime. So if I stop a car and he's got 5 catalytic converters in there, I have no idea if those came from Goleta or if they came from Camarilla. And if they can't match them up to a victim, I have no crime to arrest the person for. But if I have a license plate number etched on there, I can run the license plate, find a victim, send a deputy or an officer from another city over to that house, check a car, knock on a door, and now we've just made the crime. So that program started in 2009, unbeknownst to us. And we're going to be relaunching it right now. We've got 6 businesses who are willing to do this for paying customers. That's kind of one of the things we really want to get businesses who will volunteer to take 5 or 10 of these a day for any customer to show up. But we understand, especially coming off the year that we just had, we do not want to infringe upon their ability to make money. So we've got about 6 so far, and we'll be rolling it out public here very soon, who will, for anybody who's coming in, if they want to check the box that says etch my catalytic converter and spray paint, it'll be done at no cost for them. And so, we've had I think we've had so far this year about 40 catalytic converters stolen here in Camarillo, which is really, really high. And so we've got to try and get a handle on that. Our deputies are really active at night. Our staffing levels decrease at night, but our deputies, they don't go sit, they don't go sit and take naps or that sort of thing. They're out there driving around neighborhoods. We've caught a number of these people, but there are just so many crews coming up, and most of them are from the LA area, and they're just coming up, crew after crew after crew. So it's something we're working hard on, and we'll be rolling that program out very soon.
As a follow-up, and you kind of touched on it, obviously, and some of your numbers bear that out, a lot of crime in Camarillo is committed by people outside of the city. They come in, they look for opportunity and are targets. How important, obviously I know it is important. How are you guys approaching working with other jurisdictions, other agencies? And are you changing or enhancing how you guys communicate with other agencies and or share information?
I would say we're not changing or enhancing. We're continuing to do what we've done. Our intelligence units talk constantly. Our crime analysis unit talks constantly. We have a daily recap of crimes that occur, significant crimes that occur throughout all of our contract cities and unincorporated areas. So every morning I get an email with significant crimes that occur. So first and foremost, if I see something that happened in Moore Park that is similar to something that we had happen in Camarillo 2 or 3 days ago, our detectives in Camarillo reach out to our detectives in Moore Park, and they compare notes on that case, and they compare the information that they've got from their investigations. Along with that, we share that information with other agencies here, with Oxnard and Ventura and CME as well. And so every week, our crime analysis unit puts together what's called a tactical bulletin, which has, anywhere from 5 to 10 pages of information on crime trends that we're seeing, on suspect vehicles that are showing up at multiple locations of crime scenes. And we share that information with all of our regional partners as well. So with our crime analysis unit sharing information the way they do, our intelligence unit, and then our detectives just talking to each other. We recently, and this is outside of the city of Camarillo, but just to give you an example, we noticed some commonalities across agricultural crimes occurring in our Oxnard Plains, where our county deputies work, similar to Fillmore and our headquarters stations. And so we formed an ag crime working group with our county detective who works out of Camarillo PD and the detectives at those other stations, so that they can start comparing notes. And if we make a good arrest on a case, they're able at times to close out some of their old cases because they realize it's the same person who's doing it. We will get evidence that shows it's the same person. So it's that constant communication and collaboration is the key for that.
And lastly, if I may, Madam Mayor, Commander, what do you, for looking forward, what do you guys think is your biggest challenge when it comes to addressing crime and or closing cases, or arresting, making more arrests, bad guys, and not letting them get off?
Yeah, I mean, our biggest challenge coming out of COVID is keeping people in custody who should be in custody. Because as you saw, when you have people coming out and getting arrested 27 different times, because in the person who I'm talking about is a prolific thief in the city. When you have people doing that, and they know that there's not going to be any immediate punishment because they know they're going to get a citation. I've told you all the story before about 4 LA criminals who came up and committed an organized retail theft at the outlets, and we ended up stopping them. And they had less than $950 worth of merchandise. And they said, all right, just give us our ticket. We know this is a misdemeanor. Let us go. Right? They're very sophisticated. They know what the laws are. And so they're aware also that we're citing and releasing for misdemeanors. They're aware that the jail, that we're trying to prevent outbreaks there. So they're really smart. They pick up on those things. And so coming out of COVID, I think it's really going to be identifying those prolific offenders and keeping them in custody, so that as people return back to work, we don't see our residential burglaries fly up. As all the businesses open to full capacity, we don't see our shoplifts go back up. Or as the bars start opening, we don't see our DUIs and DUI collisions go back up. So it's really how we come out of COVID and how we address those issues coming out of COVID that's going to be key for us this year.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Susan, did you have questions?
I did, and a few comments. Commander, as everybody said, thank you. It was a great report. And where I work, I interact with your officers a lot, yesterday especially. And I can just tell you that we are all really, really grateful for the support and how quickly they were there yesterday.
We have a great relationship with CASA, and we appreciate that too.
And we appreciate you more than you know, and kind of hate it when we have to call, but yeah. I thought this year was going to see increased crime, or this past year, because I thought that with the economy and job loss and people out of work and idle time, that those things would just combine to crime and people resorting to crime, frankly, because they weren't making money or able to work. But I didn't factor in that everybody would be home. So it's just been really interesting to see that play out. And I was going to ask you sort of the same thing that you already alluded to about coming out of COVID, that people have not had to think about those things. And so, I hope that our community just, as they go back to work and send their kids back to school, remember to lock your doors and remember to do all those things that we, used to do. I wanted to ask, was there an increase in neighborhood watch groups?
Yeah, we had I think we're up over 60 neighborhood watch groups. So I think that's up, I want to say that's up 10 or 12 from last year. And then, you know, kind of in line with that, our followers on Nextdoor has significantly increased. I think we're up to over 20,000 Nextdoor followers as well. And I think we were at 16 or 17 last year, I think. So we've seen increases in both of those.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. And one more thing, could you just talk about the dashboard that's going to come out? Because I like data too. So
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of the sheriff's office here, but one of the things that we've talked about over the last, 10 months is increased transparency in law enforcement. And, at the sheriff's office, we really believe we have a great story to tell. I'm proud of the work that our women and men do every day and the relationships they built with community members and community groups. And so in the interest of, continuing to build that trust in our communities, we've been working on public-facing dashboards now. One of my partners and I and a few of other staff members have been working on this dashboard, and they're going to be focused on a couple different things for now. The first thing, it'll be the UCR, the Uniform Crime Reporting numbers over the last 30 years. So we'll have a couple different, it'll be a crime and traffic dashboard that'll talk about that crime. We'll have a dashboard on use of force, which will lay out all of our agency's uses of force from 2016 up until current times. And you'll be able to dig down into the details on that. And then, as I've mentioned previously, I think we started collecting stop data pursuant to the Racial Identity Profiling Act of 2015. Our agency started collecting stop data on January 1st of this year. And that stop data includes perceived demographics of the people who were stopped. And so we have to report that information to the to the Department of Justice in April of next year, and then they'll release that information to the public through their Open Justice website. Well, we decided we don't want to wait. We want our communities to have that information right away. And so we built a RIPA dashboard that people can dig into, and it's an interactive dashboard where you can see the demographics of the people that we stopped. You can see the reasons we stopped them and the actions we took during the stop and the result of those stops. But we've also taken it a step further, and we want our community to have information and access to all of the data so that they can make informed and educated decisions. So we've also included by jurisdiction, the population demographics of our jurisdiction. We've included the population demographics of arrestees and suspects and victims of crime. So when we talk about why are certain people stopped, why might they be stopped, we're going to provide all the data for the public, and you can go and click, and it's fully interactive. Really visually pleasing, and it's just in the interest of telling the story that we have to tell. And like I said, I think we have a really good story to tell, and so I think those dashboards they'll be viewable through the sheriff's website, and we're probably maybe 2 months away from having those things ready to go. And when we do that, obviously the sheriff will be doing a press release and letting everybody know about it. And if council individually wants demonstrations on that just before it goes live, I'd be happy to do that. But I'm really proud of those dashboards. They look really good. They're very interactive, user-friendly, and they tell a great story.
I'm equally as proud for you to be able to show yourselves off. And I just think that speaks loudly to the community. That you want to share that data and that they're able to get to it easily and it's accessible. So thank you. And thank you for all your hard work and everybody that's out there keeping us safe. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 more items on the 5 o'clock agenda, but I want to stop at 6:45 so we'll have a short break before we start again on the public hearing item. And then if there's anything left, we can take that up after the public hearing. The next item is under city manager. The first one is Kidstream term sheet. Can we have the staff report, please?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint. And if you can let me know if you see that. Do you see the PowerPoint?
Not yet.
Okay, let me try this again.
Now we see it.
All right. Okay, so I'll begin with an overview of this item. Then I'd like to turn it over to Kidstream staff for an overview of the project, the community benefit, and the project schedule. And this agenda item is for your consideration to authorize the city manager to execute a second amendment to the term sheet between the city and Kidstream. And as you know, discussions between the city and Kidstream for the sale of the old library building began back in early 2017. Subsequently, then on June 15, 2018, the city and Kidstream entered into a term sheet for the sale of the former library at an appraised rate of $900,000. And the term sheet, including subsequent amendments, described the framework of the potential terms of the proposed transaction. And so in addition to the sale, the construction of a children's museum is what would be happening at that library, and that the close of escrow date for this transaction was scheduled for January 27th, 2020, with an operating date of April 1st, 2021. In the term sheet also, there's a provision for a rental of limited indoor use of the building at market rate. And so the Kidstream continues to rent the facility. As you recall, there were two significant and major incidents that occurred in 2018, which impacted Kidstream's capital campaign. And this was the Borderline shooting and the Thomas fire. And so this also then changed the dates, the proposed dates at the time. So on December 12th, 2019, the City Council authorized the first amendment to the term sheet, which amended the close of escrow to October 1st, 2021, with an opening date targeted at November 28th, 2022, and also shifted some dates then in as far as the project process. So the proposed schedule that's attached as part of this report also then changes some major milestones. It shifts the major milestones. The second amendment to the term sheet has two notable elements that I wanted to draw to your attention tonight. One of them being that the close of escrow is now anticipated to be April 14th, 2022, and with an operating date of January 6th, 2023. The second element is that the acquisition of the property from the city, it would be as a donation rather than a sale. And this would allow the capital campaign to focus on the development project and the construction of the property and the installation of the exhibits. So the city donation of the property will trigger prevailing wage on the construction. And this is a factor that Kidstream has been keeping an eye on. That's, really been definitely, been not wanting to trigger because of the increased cost in construction. But they have considered the impact, and they have advised staff that a donation provides a far greater financial benefit over the increased cost caused by the prevailing wage. Kidstream would be able to redesignate funds to the construction, and these funds, the funds that would have otherwise been used for the purchase of the property. And Kidstream has also advised that the transfer of title will provide an advantage for continued fundraising, and because some potential donors are more willing to commit under the real property interest. There are some conditions that are outlined in the term sheet and the grant deed if the city was to enter into the second amendment to the term sheet. And if the parties are to enter into an agreement for the transfer and development of the property, the grant deed would also have certain conditions, such as that the construction and the use would only be for a children's museum. So this would be recorded under the grant deed. Another provision is that the property transfer is subject to the compliance of an environmental review, subject to the approval of the entitlements and the issuance of required permits. Another condition would be that the city may reacquire the property, and that the city could reacquire this property at no cost except for Kidstream's expense on the property to bring it up to code. And another condition is outlined that there would be continued progress on the development. So that continued progress is expected. And that the city must approve the transfer of the property should the property be transferred to another party. So again, the city must approve that, and it would only approve it for use of a children's museum. So it would stay, the property would have to be maintained as to what its purpose would be. A little bit about the development project and the pre-application process. Back in November, city staff met with Kidstream staff and the project manager, and they reviewed the renderings and the layout of the concept. Staff was able to provide some guidance and suggested revisions before the development application is submitted. So those discussions continue, and so it's really good bouncing ideas back and forth on that concept. One of the conditions of the initial term sheet, and it continues to be in subsequent, the subsequent amendment, is that a parking agreement with the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Parks District would need to be resolved. And again, that the property transfer is subject to the environmental review. So one of the things that staff will be working on is making sure that these items are worked on a parallel track. So it'd be the CEQA review, the preparation of the agreement for transfer and development of the property, and the application for a conditional use permit. Those would be brought to the city council for your consideration all at the same time. And we expect that this would be done on or around January 12th based on the schedule that's attached as an exhibit to the proposed term sheet. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kidstream staff. And so online we have Miss Christy Ackel. She is the president and founder of Kidstream. Mr. Michael Shanklin is the executive director, and Mr. Sean Leonard is the project manager. So I'd like to turn it over to them. They have a presentation for you regarding the concept, the community interest, and then also we'll go over the project schedule with you.
Thank you, Carmen, and thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. We are thrilled to be here tonight. I think it was a number of years ago where I stood in front of you at an in-person meeting and shared my passion for this project and my belief that this project is for community good and will really benefit so many people in our community. So it's our privilege to present to you tonight. Next slide, please. So we wanted to start with our mission. Our mission is to provide an engaging environment where kids explore, play, and discover. And that's at the bedrock of everything that we do. Next slide, please. So tonight I wanted to share a little bit with you about our history, some Kidstream facts that I think are relevant this evening, a snapshot of our strategic plan, an overview of the public benefit with some good data points for our data people, and then an overview of our project timeline. Next slide, please. So with this, I'd love to have Christy Ackel, who is our founder and board chair, to really tell you how this project came to fruition. Christy?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. My background, I just wanted to give a little bit of a history just here to kind of pepper this. My background is in science education. Specifically, I was a high school biology teacher in Ventura, and I considered it my own personal mission to reignite a spark in students who often, by the time that they got to my classroom, already thought that they weren't good at STEM subjects. And so when I left the classroom, after having the first of my 3 daughters, I was determined to keep my daughter's interest in STEM learning alive. And for many children, this spark is first lit and remains burning through hands-on opportunities that are often unique to children's museums and science centers. Unfortunately, most of these hands-on opportunities are outside of our geographic region and require over an hour or more in travel to neighboring counties. On one fateful visit 7 years ago to Kid Space Children's Museum in Pasadena, I remember looking at a plaque outside of this 40-year-old institution before leaving, and I saw that it honored the women of the Junior League of Pasadena, who laid the foundation for what ultimately grew into an economic driver for the city of Pasadena and beyond, serving hundreds of thousands of children every year. And maybe it was that plaque, or maybe it was the bumper-to-bumper traffic that I was stuck in on the way home with 3 napping children in the back seat. but I began making calls, frustrated by the fact that there was no resource like this in Ventura County. So my goal was to find out who in our county of over 800,000 people might be working on such a project. And ultimately, after looking into a few organizations and knowing how critical the foundation for an organization's business should be, a small grassroots group of fellow passionate volunteers and I formed KidStream in the summer of 2016. I have to add my favorite quote from anthropologist Margaret Mead here, in which she says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." As we near our 5th birthday, I have to reflect with great pride on our small but mighty and growing group of thoughtful, committed volunteers for not only laying a solid foundation, but being mission focused from the outset. Prior to COVID closures, KidStream was reaching over 10,000 children annually with hands-on stream-based learning all over Ventura County. I also want to point out the poetry of bringing in KidStream's inaugural executive director, an experienced veteran in the children's museum industry, Michael Shanklin, who just spoke, whom we hired 1 year ago, just over 1 year ago, before the world shut down, as he was the CEO of KidSpace, the children's museum in Pasadena, whose visit lit the spark for KidStream. I have every confidence that KidStream will become an economic driver for our city and our region that is on par and will hopefully exceed the great children's museums throughout our country.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you very much. This is a great organization. I'm privileged to be a part of it, and such an amazing community. Thank you all. Next slide, please. So this is just an image of some of the recent updated renderings that we have. And I want to give a special thanks to the entire city team that's been guiding us through this process, and our project manager, Sean Leonard. Next slide, please. So here's some KidStream facts. And our founding date, as Christy indicated, was June of 2016. Our average attendance pre-COVID was about 10,000 guests a year, many of who were underserved communities outside of our community. Target audience is really children ages birth and up, and volunteer opportunities for really all ages. Our projected attendance is approximately 150,000 guests per year when we're fully open and operating. That is both our outdoor space and our indoor space. Approximately 125 of those guests will be children and their families. Approximately 24,500 school children in groups, and then roughly 500 teachers from the entire county. And our projected budget is $2.5 million. Next slide, please. So here's some of the overview of our strategic plan without going in depth. Our number one strategy, number one priority is to really open the museum with a high quality experience that the community can enjoy. Our financial sustainability has always been paramount to the organization, so we're being good stewards of the resources that are entrusted to us. Community partnerships are incredibly important to us, and have reached out to several in the community that we're forming relationships with and forging ahead on key strategies to meet the needs of the community. We want to create programs and exhibits that are fun, engaging, accessible, and that are really based on research, best practices, and great data points, so that we're submitting the best for our community. Next, our leadership is our final element. And this is something that I'm really proud of, that I've never had as part of a strategic plan at another institution, and that we want to create leaders within the organization and be a nonprofit that is really practicing best practices, so that we can shine a light on our community and all the great things that we do. So just in terms, I think it's important to point out that our response to COVID, you know, there are some positives that have come from this horrible pandemic for KidStream. Certainly creating virtual programming for the community that has been accessible to the community. We also created stream learning kits over the summer that were really targeted for communities. We also provided those in English and Spanish, and then made a concerted effort to get those Spanish-speaking kits out to our community who could avail themselves of that. And then finally, we made a key decision, instead of opening the indoor exhibits, to really focus on the outside experience first, knowing that when families do come back and are comfortable getting back into a museum setting, that they'll do so outside where we know the data indicates that they feel safer. Next slide, please. We wanted to break it down into what's in it for the community. And first and foremost, we know that our children are going to be the primary beneficiaries here. I've got a couple of reports that I cited in particular about the fact that play is really the leading factor in a child's development. From that play, they develop a range of skills that will really come in handy for them down the road as they're applying other learning in their environment. The second point is that there's data from our industry that says that for children who visited a museum in kindergarten, they had higher achievement scores in reading, mathematics, and science in third grade. Versus a separate group who did not visit a museum. So what we're seeing here is that there's a clear benefit, and we're actually coming alongside the school districts to help equip children with the tools that they need to succeed. Next slide, please. So if we could go back one slide to parents. One more. There we go. Thank you. So we asked, there was some data and research that was conducted asking parents, what do you see the benefit of a children's museum to be? And basically what they said is, it makes me feel like I'm being a good parent because I'm spending quality time with my child and I'm giving them an engaging and educational experience. And we know that when parents are engaged in a child's education, then everybody wins in that scenario. The second point is that by promoting a new museum in our community, there is data from the London School of Economics that says that parents or adults who visit those museums feel as if they've just got a $5,000 plus bonus or a raise. And so this clearly shows that there's value in a museum and the learning that takes place there. Next slide. So access is part of our triple bottom line. And we know that in a children's museum, that it is an element that levels the playing field. And so we conducted a study from Dr. Dumui of Cal Lutheran Economics Department that really said that children's museums break down those economic and social differentiation, and that they really create an environment where children can communicate, engage with others, and really be inspired to achieve great things. And with our focus on STEM, we know that there's a tremendous opportunity there as well. And then the second bullet point is that, California museums collectively served 2.4 million children in kindergarten through high school, 12th grade, and that's equivalent to almost 40% of California's public and private schools. So the point being is that we play an incredible role in that school group visitation, where we come alongside the schools and do a lot of things that they're unable to do in that informal learning environment. Next slide, please. So finally, we wanted to share some of the economic benefits to the community. And our industry data indicates that 89% of Americans believe that museums provide an important economic impact on the community. And that's a pretty compelling number. There's data in here that I didn't include, but museums are also one of the most trusted sources of information in the country right now. 76% of all leisure travelers participate in cultural or heritage activities, such as visiting museums. And the data indicates that travelers who do that spend 60% more in terms of other leisure travelers. So clearly an economic benefit to the community. And finally, we know that Kidstream estimates that we're going to be providing over 45 STEM-related jobs to the community when the museum is able to open up fully to the public. Next slide. So this is an overview of our timeline, and really, I would say that this is a very conservative timeline. My modus operandi has always been to underpromise and overproduce so that we do much better than what is projected. But nonetheless, this gives us some room to operate. And as you can see, that the grand opening is projected to be sometime in early January or sooner if at all possible. So that is, next slide, that's really the end of my presentation, and just very thankful to you all for your vision to believe in a children's museum for the children of our community.
Just not to get people's hopes up, that's January of 23, not next January.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. Yes, thank you, Mayor Craven.
Okay, are there any questions? I'm not going to take comments from council members yet because we have members of the public who'd like to speak to us, but do you have questions?
Mayor, you're muted.
Was I muted when I asked for questions?
No, you weren't.
Thank you. Okay, I can now see council members. Is there anyone who has a question? Okay, I'm going to go and ask for members of the public who would like to speak to us. I see 2 hands. Jeffrey Lambert. You have.
Hi, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Jeffrey Lambert. Excuse me? Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm not sure why the speaker's time is not set at 3 minutes. Okay, you'll have 3 minutes. When you have 2 minutes, a yellow light will show. And then when the red light shows at the end of the 3rd minute, we ask you to stop, and I will enforce the 3-minute time limit. So Jeffrey Lambert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. I will not take 3 minutes of your time. My name is Jeffrey Lambert. I happen to be the Chief Operating Officer of the Ventura County Community Foundation. And I want to just say a couple words in support of KidStream and the recommendation before the council tonight. One is just to reiterate the challenge of fundraising in the last couple of years. Our community has been incredibly generous in response to the many disasters we have faced, but it's clearly distracted our other nonprofits from the kind of fundraising that they've been successful prior to these last couple of years of disasters. So I wanted to reiterate the importance of understanding that point and to give KidStream the time it takes to get to where they need to be to their desired outcome. I want to also reiterate the great presentation from Michael and Christy. They told the story better than I could about how important this museum is for our community, for the city of Camarillo and the greater Ventura County community, based on the education and it's for students and the support for their growth, also for the economic impact of the surrounding area and general health of the community to have an additional museum in Ventura County. And with that, I would ask the City Council to approve the recommendation before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Hillary McLaughlin when the clock has been reset.
Hello, Madam.
Wait a minute, we have to reset the clock. There you go.
Oh, great. And can I confirm that you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I don't think I will use the full 3 minutes either, but I do want to take the opportunity to thank the City Council for all of the support of KidStream. And really, from what I can hear from this, sharing in this vision of building this space where our kids in surrounding communities can participate to learn and explore, play, and discover. I am a lifelong resident. Both my husband and I have grown up in Camarillo. Now we are raising 2 children and are so proud to have Camarillo be our home. I've grown my career locally at Amgen for the past 15 years. And now I am privileged to sit on the KidStream board of directors with Christy and Michael. So on behalf of the entire board, I want to share that we are motivated, we are excited, and we are so ready to continue working hand in hand with the city to really invest in the next generation of leaders and continue to make Camarillo the best community for our families, our children, This is a community I want to continue investing in. It's my home, and I can only hope one day that my children call Camarillo their home as well as they grow their families. And I think that KidStream is going to be one of these pillars of our community. So thank you so much for listening to the recommendation today. And I do hope that there is support for us to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. When the clock has been reset now, the next speaker is Jessica Lavariaga Monforti.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to speak before you this evening. My name is Jessica Lavariega Monforti, and I am the Vice President of KidStream, and also I am the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at California Lutheran University. And that is a strategic move on my part to help build community partnerships in ways that I think will benefit our community. I am such a supporter of KidStream, and I really want to talk just for a moment about why that is the case. I have spent 20 years of my career doing extensive research on the impact of educational practices and career development for women and people of color and young people. And what I have learned over time is that a lot of our intervention efforts to get students interested in STEM careers happens far too late in their life. Oftentimes those interventions take place in high school, and the truth of the matter is if we haven't gotten to them by 5th grade or 6th grade, we have missed our opportunity. And so what KidStream offers and the public benefit of having something like KidStream in this community is the ability to build together STEM and art and inspire our children early on to have an interest in STEM careers, to pique their curiosity through play, and to give them a safe environment to do that with other children. We are able, I think, in this museum to create such a unique experience for students, but also for families. And one of the things that is really important to me and close to my heart is that this will be a bilingual space so that parents and grandparents who speak Spanish, for example, can read instructions on how to play and how to use equipment with English-speaking children. And what a wonderful way to honor the cultural heritage of our region, but also what an important way to signal how important it is to learn from our elders as well. And so I'm really hoping that this evening we will get some support for KidStream moving forward in this process, and appreciate the time that you've allowed me to speak this evening.
Thank you. The clock has been reset. The next speaker is Wendy Acevedo Solis.
Hi, excuse me. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak this evening. I'm honored to be able to provide you with my insight. My name is Wendy Acevedo Solis, and I have started working with KidStream about 2 years ago. I was at a local Camarillo family's home at a birthday party, as many of us do with our children. I have 2 young girls that go to school over at Cape Charter here in the Camarillo community, and I had the pleasure of meeting an existing board member at that time, and she shared with me this project that Christy helped found, and I was just fell in love with the idea. Since I was a child, I've been fascinated with museums. I have gone on to share this passion with my children ever since they were infants. We've gone through all of the children's museums up and down the coast, and it's incredible, absolutely incredible to see the desire and to explore through their eyes. It's one thing to remember going to those wonderful museums as children with my parents and with school, but to see it through your own children is just an incredible experience. And when I heard about what Christy community and the Kidstream board was trying to do with Kidstream, I wanted to help. I wanted to be a part of that. And so at the time, I was starting to be a part of a donations committee for the company that I work for, which is a local employee, Yardi Systems, which is a software developing company, and thought what a great partnership to partner, STEM and what Kidstream is doing with our philosophy at Yardi. And we were able to, for the last 2 years, donate significantly to Kidstream and provide a nice gift in helping push forward the idea of Kidstream. I'm proud and humbled to work for this company, and that they're able to support this vision that Kidstream has as well, that they believe in Kidstream, that there is the desire to push this forward as a community and work in partnership. So I just want to say, I'm humbled to speak to you. I'm humbled that you have the opportunity to provide this opportunity for Camarillo and our community. I sincerely hope that you support Kidstream in this process. And this is going to be a phenomenal opportunity for children within our community to not have to leave our area, to have something locally that they can come to, explore, and hopefully help them with finding and an interest in STEM before they get to that high
Thank
school.
you very much for your comments. This is not the first time this has come before us. Obviously, it's the second amendment. So the council is very, very familiar with this development project. And tonight we're looking at the second amendment that would make provisions to donate the land under certain circumstances. The land could come back to us if the project isn't moved forward. So I can open it up for council discussion or for a motion.
Your Honor,
Mr.
I don't really have a discussion. I think everything has been said, but I'm ready to make the motion.
Fine.
Anytime. I'd like to make a motion then that we authorize the city manager to execute the second amendment to the term sheet for the former library.
I'll second.
The motion and a second. Mr. Tremblay, did you have a comment?
No, I had comments, but I think we're at a motion, and I think I know where we're going to go. So I'm going to withhold those for now, but they were very supportive.
I think all of us have extremely supportive comments that go right along with the ones we've made every time we've talked about Kidstream. So could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Kildee?
Yes.
Councilmember Santangelo?
Very much yes.
Councilmember Tremblay?
Enthusiastic, yes.
Vice Mayor Mulchay?
Yes, yes.
Mayor Craven?
I won't give my children's museum speech tonight, yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we still have another item under city manager, which was consent E, and we have new business that we will put over until after the public hearing tonight. And with this, we will recess for a short break and come back at 7 o'clock for public comments and a public hearing. It is now 7 o'clock. I'll call the city council meeting back to order and ask the record to reflect that all city council members are present. This is the time for public hearings. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to us on an item that is or is not on the agenda? With the exception of the public hearing item. I see no hands up, so we will move on to the public hearing.
Mayor Craven,
Yes.
somebody had raised their hand, but they lowered.
It's back.
Okay, I see R&C Hirschbach. You have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. At the end of your 3 minutes, the light will, at the end of 2 minutes, the light will turn yellow. And at the end of the 3rd minute, the light will turn red. At that time, your time will be up and I will enforce the 3 minutes rule. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Craven. My name is Robert Hirschbach. I am on the board of the HOA Sterling Hills. I'm also a committee member of Save Sterling Hills Open Space. I just have a couple quick questions. I don't want to take up too much time. I understand that there was a question submitted to the city attorney about the development rights for the golf course, Sterling Hills Golf Course. I was wondering if he has come to a conclusion on those development rights, if they've been submitted back to the city in some fashion, or where are we with getting the development rights back to the city? That's
Okay,
basically it.
This is a time we take public comments and we can get back to you later, but we don't engage in discussion now.
Okay, I just had a question. I just wanted to put it out there.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the city council on an item that is or is not on the agenda, with the exception of the public hearing item, which we'll take up next? I see no hands raised. So we will go on to the public hearing. Fiscal year 21-22 Community Development Block Grant and Cdbg COVID preliminary allocations. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Craven. We're going to have Oksana Buck providing the presentation for the council this evening.
Good evening, Mayor Craven and council members. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an overview of the CDBG program, review the funding requests, receive public input, and review and approve preliminary funding allocations. CDBG is a HUD program that has been in effect since 1974. It provides annual-based grants to the states, counties, and cities to carry out activities that meet one of the following national objectives: benefit low or moderate income persons, prevent or eliminate blight or slums, or address an urgent community need. In order to receive CDBG funding, the city must have a 5-year consolidated plan that identifies community needs and provides a framework for addressing those needs. The city has recently completed its 5-year consolidated plan, which is in effect until June 30th, 2024. In addition to the consolidated plan, the city must also develop annual action plans, which explain how the city will spend its annual CDBG grant. At the end of each program year, the city must prepare the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report on program accomplishments. The city is eligible to receive 2 CDBG allocations. The first is the regular CDBG allocation of $338,000 for the upcoming program year, plus $27,800 in program income that was received during the current program year, for a total of $365,000. The second is Cdbg COVID relief allocation of $384,000 that must be used only for activities related to COVID-19 response over a 3-year period. Please note that this is the third round of COVID relief funding. The first round of COVID funding we received was in the amount of $192,000, and these funds have been allocated to 4 agencies listed here. The St. Columba's Church Food Pantry, Caregivers, which provide volunteer services, St. Vincent de Paul, providing emergency assistance, and Lutheran Social Services, providing rent and utility assistance. And the COVID amendment to allocate the $192,000 was adopted in September of 2020. All 4 of these service providers have already entered into funding agreements to use the money. The city did not receive an allocation in the second round of COVID relief funds because the funding went to the states, which then allocated the funds to cities with high homeless population. And now the city is eligible for the third round in the amount of $384,000. I will now go over the available funding, the applications, and staff recommendations for the regular CDBG program for the upcoming fiscal year 2021-22. This slide shows the breakdown on how the regular CDBG funds can be spent by category. A total of $54,000 can be used on public services, $67,000 can be used on program administration and fair housing, and $243,000 may be used on other eligible housing activities. 5 nonprofit organizations applied for CDBG funding for public service programs, and they're listed here as A through E. Starting with A, Lutheran Social Services is requesting $60,000 to provide emergency assistance such as gas, food, and hotel vouchers. An estimated 50 Camarillo residents would be assisted. Ventura County Human Services Agency is requesting $8,000 to pay for fleet services to provide transportation for the homeless persons or families staying at the Rain Transitional Living Center. An estimated 8 Camarillo residents will be assisted. Livingston Memorial Visiting Nurse Association is requesting $10,000 to subsidize the cost of in-home medical care for low-income residents. An estimated 24 Camarillo residents will be assisted. Turning Point Foundation is requesting $19,470 to maintain current staff positions to provide services such as case management to the homeless and mentally ill, provide mental health services, substance abuse treatment, referrals to services, and employment assistance. An estimated 8 Camarillo residents will be assisted. Future Laboratories requested $75,000 for STEM and robotics education program. However, this application was incomplete. It was submitted after the application deadline has passed, and it also did not address how the program meets CDBG program requirements to primarily assist low-income individuals. For these reasons, staff does not recommend funding this program. Staff does recommend to fully fund Rain Transitional Living Center, Livingston Memorial Visiting Nurse Association, and Turning Point Foundation. And finally, staff recommends funding Lutheran Social Services with the remaining amount available for public services, which is $17,410. CDBG funds may be used on other eligible programs. This includes Habitat for Humanity with a request of $75,000 for the home repair program to purchase building materials to complete home repairs for low-income families. An estimated 5 Camarillo households would be assisted. The next 2 programs under G and H are city programs. The first is the city's Affordable Housing Property Acquisition Program. It allows the city to identify and purchase property for providing new or preserving existing affordable housing units. Staff recommends allocating $153,000 to this program, which may assist 1 household. The second is the city's first-time homebuyer down payment assistance program, and staff recommends allocating the remaining $15,000 to this program, which would provide one loan. We can also use a portion of CDBG funding for program administration and fair housing. HUD regulations allow up to 20% of the grant to be used for that purpose. As mentioned in the agenda report, the city can use administrative funds to hire a consultant to administer the CDBG program. Staff would return to City Council for consultant selection and approval of a professional services agreement at a later date. Staff recommends allocating the full $60,000 allowed for program administration and $7,000 to fair housing. And this wraps up the regular CDBG funding requests. I will now move on to the available funding, the applications, and staff recommendations for the CDBG COVID funding. Unlike the regular CDBG funds, which is for 1 year, the CDBG COVID funds are for a 3-year program. As mentioned previously, the city's CDBG COVID allocation is $384,000, and we received 2 applications for these funds. The first was from Catholic Charities requesting $10,000 to maintain staff positions in the OASIS program, who assists seniors with referrals to social services, coordinate volunteers to help with grocery shopping, transportation, errands, and minor housekeeping. An estimated 110 Camarillo residents will be assisted. The second was from Camarillo Healthcare District, requesting $150,000 to help cover the increased cost and operations of the Senior Nutrition Program, home delivered meals. An estimated 490 residents will be assisted. Staff recommends fully funding these proposals. And just like with the regular CDBG grant, HUD regulations allow a portion of the funds to be used on administration. Total request for CDBG COVID funding comes to $184,000 of the available $384,000. We plan to advertise the availability of the remaining $200,000 to solicit additional funding requests from eligible nonprofit organizations at a later date. And this slide shows the CDBG program timeline. The CDBG program is on an annual cycle. It began with an informational meeting on January 6th for any potential applicants. The funding applications were due on February 12th. Today's public hearing is to review those applications, receive public input, and adopt preliminary funding allocations. The next step will be to prepare a draft action plan and release it for a 30-day public review period, which will be from April 12th to May 11th. The next public hearing will be on May 12th to consider adoption of the action plan. And once adopted, the action plan will be submitted to HUD for a 45-day review, followed by executing funding agreements with HUD and with subrecipients. And lastly, the consolidated annual performance evaluation report will be prepared to report on program outcomes. The suggested action is to adopt a resolution approving the CDBG and CDBG COVID preliminary funding allocations for inclusion in the draft fiscal year 2021-22 CDBG action plan. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, but if any council members have questions, I will take their questions first. Mr. Kildee?
Kevin, you're muted.
Mr. Kildee, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you for letting me know that. Ms. Buck, could you go back, please, to, I believe it's slide 14. I just have a question on that slide, please. If you're able to do that.
Just 1 second.
Slide 14 was next to the last.
Is this
Yeah,
the slide you have?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah, I have a question on the administrative cost. How was that calculated? And is that a firm number?
The cap is 20% of the amount that we're applying for. So if we're applying for 160,000, the cap would be 20% of that.
Okay, so that's how we got the 24,000 though. It's the percentage that, the cap percentage of being 20% of the amount.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Craven.
Ms. Santangelo.
If other organizations apply, will that come back to us at the next hearing? Or does the process have to start over for new applicants or new requests?
The process will start over. We have to go through the application process, and we'll bring all the proposals back to council and amend the action plan to include any additional programs.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. We have several attendants. If there's anyone present who would like to speak to us on this item, please raise your hand. I see no hands raised. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak to us on this item? Seeing no hands raised, I will close the public hearing and open it up to the council.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Tremblay.
I'll move the suggested action.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question before we take a vote?
Certainly.
And it's going to be directed to Brian, and I apologize for not asking this earlier. Brian, would I be able to abstain from an element within this this item? Funding for a specific organization?
Sorry, what was your question?
Would I be able to vote on this item but abstain from funding on a specific line item?
Are you abstaining?
Potential conflict?
Are you abstaining because of a conflict?
Correct. But just to one specific line item for one specific organization.
Well, I believe the way this works is that the funding for the various entities depends upon that there's a certain amount that gets divided up among the different entities. So if you have a conflict on one of them, I believe you would have a conflict on all of them because the ability to share the money, if you will, the pot, would be joined with the one that you have the conflict on. So while we're talking about this, which one do you have a conflict on and why?
Specifically the Camarillo Healthcare District, only because my family's company is currently under contract with, personally, with the CEO.
Right.
Of the healthcare district.
The recommendation is that you mute your line and your video, and that you recuse yourself from further discussion about this. And obviously, you would not be voting.
Correct. Okay. I will do that.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Kildee,
Yes.
Councilmember Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremblay,
Yes.
Mayor Craven.
Yes.
That motion carries 4-0 with Vice Mayor Moshe absent.
Okay, we're going to go back up and pick up where we left off. It was consent item E. I put it under city manager. Could you tell us who, Mr. Kildee, I believe it was, who had a question on this? Maybe we should start with your question. Or would you like a staff report?
Mine was, Madam Mayor, my question was already answered.
Oh,
I pulled this, yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Would you like a staff report, or just, would you want to ask your question and get an answer?
I think I can ask the question.
Okay.
And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is that this amendment extends for a year, and that this cost is for fully operational. Is that correct?
That would be correct. This would constitute what a back to full operation would mean. It includes the this agreement that we're in existingly is a 5-year agreement. This would extend it essentially one more year, a 6th year, and it would follow the same escalation as all the previous 5 years. And it also includes a minimum wage increase that we anticipate to occur in January.
Okay. So let's just say that they're not open fully by July 1st. Does that mean we'll come back with another amendment to it?
So yeah, this extension actually would activate on July 1st. And it would still serve as an underlying agreement, even if we are operating in a modified way. So so we would still be maintaining the existing services that were created in amendments 2 through 4. So the curbside service, the core services, the virtual literacy center, and the virtual Russell Fisher business collection. At the point in time, however, that we would come back with a plan to reopen, that would be another chance to modify the operation, but this would still serve as the underlying PSA.
Okay, I guess I just wanted to clarify that there are still modifications that are able to be made depending on the level of service and where we are.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion on item E?
I'll move the suggested action.
Second.
A motion and a second. Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Kildee?
Yes.
Councilmember Santangelo?
Yes.
Councilmember Tremblay?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Molche?
Yes.
Mayor Craven?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, I believe that the only thing left is new business oral communications. Have I missed something?
That's correct.
I was gonna say, I don't see anybody jumping up and saying you missed my item, so. City manager.
No comments tonight, Mayor.
City attorney.
I have no comments tonight.
Okay, let's start with Vice Mayor Molche.
All right, I will try to be quick or brief. Meetings attended March 11th. I attended the Airport Authority meeting to give you an update on that because I spoke about the lease, review of the lease. The Airport Authority, Camarillo and Oxnard for that matter, was unanimous in we did not approve the hangar lease. We, after a lot of feedback and community input, there were one, if not two, items that were kind of sticklers where there had still been some quite a bit of disagreement between the County of Airports or Department of Airports, the county, and the Hangar Association, CAHODA. And so we asked that they go back and try to hammer out some finer points in some of the language that I think as an attorney, Mr. Tremblay would probably appreciate and understand. But so there wasn't a lot of daylight. It was just how some of the language in the lease on one specific item. And so it's my understanding they're trying to hammer that out, and they will potentially bring that back to the authority. March 18th, I attended the AWA breakfast where Mr. Kotzel gave a presentation on the desalter and the history of the desalter. And every time I see that presentation, I'm reminded as to how, and Charlotte appreciates it a lot more than I do because you've been here and you too, Kevin. But it's just amazing. The the journey that project had.
We use a lot of synonyms.
And he did an excellent job. It was very, very thorough, very detailed. I can't help but to think that a lot of people really gleaned a lot of great information from his presentation, and I think probably came to really appreciate all that was invested in and what it took to get the desalter to become a reality. My one question or one item I want to bring up was the very question that Mr. Hirschbach had asked earlier during public comment. And that was a question to our city attorney in regards to any update on the Sterling Hills Golf Course redevelopment rights or development rights. And if you didn't have an answer, when you would anticipate one, Brian?
Well, I was to say I'm reviewing it, and I have not reached a conclusion yet, but I have been doing research on it.
Do you think we'll have some sort of insight in the coming month?
Oh, certainly.
Okay. Okay, that was all I had. Thank you very much.
Ms. Santangelo.
Okay, for meetings attended, March 11th with Mr. Molche, I was at the Airport Authority. March 17th was CPA Executive Committee, which was a very, very long meeting for XCOM, and very complicated. There will be coming, I will be bringing information to you shortly, not tonight. March 23rd was the Investment Committee. So I just wanted to share with you, since you spoke about the desalter, on March 19th, I'm in the Ventura County Leadership Academy, and it was our Agriculture, Water, and the Environment Day. And so we had a presentation from Dan Drugan, who's the manager at Callegas Water. And he spoke so highly of how Camarillo was really attacking the water issue by investing in the desalter. So it was just kind of cool to hear that. I was proud, even though I haven't been a part of it as long as some of you. I wanted to make a comment about Ventura Boulevard, especially in front of the Mark. The outdoor seating that looks more permanent, I think is absolutely wonderful. And I hope that as things lift, I hope that at some point we are open to talking about Ventura Boulevard. On Friday evenings when I drive home from work and I drive down Ventura Boulevard, seeing people outside and eating is so inviting. And I think it's something we ought to talk about. And then I wanted to close and say something about the communities of Atlanta and Boulder. They have experienced the loss of 18 lives, mothers and fathers and husbands and wives, daughters and sons, and a police officer who risked his life and lost his life to save others. And I want those communities to know that I'm sending strength and courage and love to them, and also to others not in those communities, but who are re-traumatized because they have gone through similar situations. And I hope, as I always do after there is a shooting, that Americans can work together and find some real solutions to this needless loss of life and violence. So, thank you.
Mr. Tremblay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On meetings attended, on March 12, I attended 2 committee meetings for the Metrolink Board of Directors, the Executive Committee and the Contract Operations and Maintenance and Safety Committee. And on March 24th, today, earlier, I had a Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency regular board meeting, and that always makes our mayor smile, given her long tenure on that board. First of all, I really appreciate Mr. Molche's and Ms. Santangelo's service on the Airport Authority. Thank you. It is not an easy task. And I, for one, really appreciate all of your service. I have 4 issues tonight that I want to talk about, and I'll try to bring this in as briefly as I can. But the first 3 out of the 4 are ones where I'm going to ask for another member of the council to concur, hopefully, in bringing something back to us for at a future time. The first is there was an article in the Ventura County Star on Monday, and the article had to do with the city of Ventura beginning on July 1st of this year. On July 1st this year, restaurants and grocery stores and other food providers in the city will be banned from using food and drink containers made of expanded polystyrene or styrofoam. And about 100, as I understand it, according to the article, about 130 other cities and counties in California have already adopted similar prohibitions, including Thousand Oaks and Ojai. It's litter, it's not biodegradable, it breaks into small pieces. I note in the article there are restaurants that have already made the shift over some time ago. And so my request is that we would ask staff just to come to council with additional information at a future meeting with an eye toward considering whether we want to move forward with a similar type of ordinance. So that's my first item up. And
I support that.
Thank you very much. The second item is on homelessness, and I thought Commander Tennyson did a great job tonight in explaining Project Hope. And I note that we had one of our allocations, preliminary allocations tonight of Cdbg funds are to the RAIN project, which of course is an agency that we successfully partner with. And you recall that one of our council goals and objectives under community enrichment was working on the area of homelessness. I've received some very thoughtful emails from a resident on the homelessness issue, and her concerns primarily are twofold. The first is I guess how I would characterize it as a perceived lack of local agency coordination, interagency coordination, and planning foresight on this issue. And the second is kind of a lack of solutions and public health issues that are created and that unsheltered individuals face. So in 2018, the council actually considered, I think in a study session, a memorandum of understanding that was broached by the County of Ventura and by the consortium, Council Consortium for the Homeless Alliance. And I think at that point we said, we're not ready to enter into that yet. And there were still some things that had to be, I think, worked on by the county on that. But I would ask if I have another colleague to concur, if we could ask staff to bring us in the future a presentation on current planning efforts, what's going on in the county relative to homelessness. We do not have a count, a point in time account for last year. Unfortunately, COVID has set a lot of things back, but basically just to give us an update and a presentation on current planning efforts, just so we can get updated on what's going on. So I would ask for support on that endeavor.
I'll support you on that one.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sean. The third thing that I wanted to, and I'm getting there, the third thing that I wanted to ask about, and this relates directly to what Councilmember Santangelo just said on Ventura Boulevard, but I want to expand it just a little bit. I have two questions that I want to pose, and I'm hoping that someone will support bringing back this item. We're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel, fortunately, and it looks like our reopening, hopefully, knock on wood, will be moving forward. We discussed, I brought up several months ago that we needed to start planning post-pandemic when emergency health orders are lifted. And we're all hopeful, of course, praying that that's going to be soon. But with specific reference to restaurants and breweries, I had two questions, and one is, and I've been asked this, well, until the emergency health orders are lifted and they're allowed to go back to 100% inside dining, is it the city's intention to allow them to continue to keep their temporary outdoor facilities? So for example, if we get to the orange tier, and we're all hoping, and then getting to the upper tier, will they be able to keep their outdoor facilities until the emergency orders are issued? And certainly, I know my personal opinion is yes. I'm just one of five, but I certainly hope that, speaking for myself, the answer to that is yes. And I would like to hear from staff on that, but in a broader context, and this is a second issue, after we're back to, knock on wood, 100% dining inside, and the emergency health orders are lifted, I would like to have a discussion at the council level, and this goes right to what Susan just talked about a few minutes ago, about being able to retain some form of outdoor dining for restaurants in the city. Now, I know that there will be a difference between those entities that have established outdoor dining on the public street in the right of way, but there are other entities that have established outdoor dining on private property, and there may be a difference there in terms of approach. But I would like to be able to discuss that as just one part of where staff think we need to go on a post-pandemic recovery slide. So I would ask for support to bring that back, bring both of those two items that I just mentioned back as a specific agenda item that we can talk about.
Maybe we could get the answer on the next tier sooner. I see this as two things. And both Mr. Vaca and Mr. Ramirez clicked in when you asked your first question. We get the answer to that one first.
I'm all ears.
It's certainly staff's intention and recommendation to the council, to allow outdoor dining until it reaches 100% indoor, and even beyond that potentially. I'll defer to Mr. Vaca on this second part, and even the end of that last point.
So I'll start with the end of the last point, that we've been telling restaurateurs that it's our intent, and we think the council's intent, to, of course, do everything we can to accommodate business recovery as best we can through the tools that we have. One of those tools has been to allow the outdoor dining, which has been very successful in Camarillo, and we're very proud of it. We would recommend that even with 100% operations interior to a business, that we would still allow for exterior dining for a transitory period, which of course is to be determined. And our recommendation would be that we continue to allow all of the permitted outdoor dining facilities that exist today. If they choose to continue to exist, we would continue to allow those. Once restaurants can operate at full capacity inside with 100% occupancy, we still think it'd be appropriate to have probably a several month transition period, because customers may still choose to dine outside for their own personal preference. And we would not want to give any one business advantage over another. So we would think that it should apply citywide. And some businesses may choose not to continue to operate their temporary outdoor dining areas, but some other businesses may choose to do so. And I think it'd be appropriate to allow each business to decide under the umbrella of allowing it for all. So that's what staff's been discussing with our existing businesses, and that's what we think is appropriate, and that's what we would advocate for the council to support.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
And I guess I thank you, Mr. Vaca, for that, and Mr. Ramirez for that. I think what I would ask is for an agenda item at the appropriate time in the next few meetings to just have a chance to talk about that and flesh it out a little bit and go from there.
Okay. And then I would just like to remind the city council that our temporary outdoor dining no fee zone clearance, which relaxed standards for parking, was enacted by resolution. And so staff does not have authority to expire those resolutions without taking that to the city council for action. So you would be the ultimate decision maker on when that happens. So I just want to remind the council that you still have the full authority over that.
And I was going to say that I think we need to look at parking. If they get to 100% inside, we need to look and are taking up part of their parking outside, then we do need to look at whether that's creating a problem, especially if there are several restaurants in a row or in an area on the public streets. I'm not saying I'm against the outdoor restaurants. I love them. I just wish we had more space for them to be outdoors, wider sidewalks. But we have to live with what we have. But at any rate, that will be coming back to us.
So, right, Madam Mayor. So what I would ask is that come back to council in all those components. And then finally, I promise it's my last one, the fourth one, and that is that I've received questions from residents who read the article on Thousand Oaks, reaching a new agreement with a new solid waste hauler. And folks have asked me, gee, what's Camarillo doing in terms of its existing solid waste contract? Does it intend to review it and so on? So I would like to just ask Mr. Ramirez briefly, what the status is of our existing solid waste franchise agreement is with Harrison.
The status is that that contract is in place until 2024. It expires, or it's the end of a 15-year tenure timeframe. There are multiple extensions potential that the council would have to act on and consider. We are in regular conversations and discussions with our waste hauler, and we will continue to be in conversations with them, because something that's coming down the pike, and we have about a year to implement, is a new organics disposal and food waste mandate from the state of California that has to be in place. And so we are in active conversations with them about that now, and we'll increase those conversations. So we are in, we'll be reporting back to you probably in the next two months on that very issue, at least as an introductory item. And we'll have more information for you at that time with regards to the overall rate structure and whatnot.
Okay, Madam Mayor, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I wasn't advocating anything. I just wanted to get some facts out on the table to help us respond to questions that we're getting. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kildee?
Yes, first meetings attended. March 11th, we had a VRSD special meeting. Let's see, we also had on March 23rd, I had an investment committee meeting. March 11th, I had a VCOG meeting as well. And if I may, what I would consider, we got some very, very great news, not only for the city of Camarillo, but in my opinion, for the county in general. And that is that the Board of Supervisors approved the Tolan Landfill CUP last week that basically allows us to keep that landfill open until it's filled. And what the original CUP determined was that we would have to close it by, I believe it was 2028, which the landfill, by all accounts, even though we've had a little bit of an uptick with COVID, it's been interesting. I guess people cleaned their garages out and did all kinds of stuff and added a little bit more tonnage to the landfill here. But by most, if not all accounts, by 2028, that landfill would not have been filled. And as all of us know here in our county, to get another permit for a new landfill, and I'll be very modest about this, would be extremely challenging. So this is really good news. We'll be able to keep it open until filled here. And as you know, most, if not all of our trash from Camarillo does go to the Tolan landfill. We had been working on this for almost 3 years. We work very closely with the Tolan group. As a matter of fact, our general manager, Chris Dyson, worked with them for a whole year on this and worked with county staff about the nuances of this agreement. And I'm happy to say that it was a 5-0 vote. So this would be a really good thing for the county, in particular for us and the other cities that use that. So there'll be more in the future with this issue. And I wanted to make that, make that announcement today. And now we got to find ways to get some more tons in to the Toland landfill on a consistent basis, which is always a challenge. But the good news is that we will basically not have to close a landfill that's not filled. So with that, that's all I had tonight, Your Honor. Appreciate the time.
Okay, to tag on to what you just said, I had down here to congratulate Ventura Regional Sanitation District on the extension and expansion. You can have more than twice as many trucks going up that road and cars, because they were limited in the past to, I think it was 57 vehicles per day on that road going up to the landfill. And that was a limitation placed by the Board of Supervisors when we first got the permit to expand Toland Road from serving only Santa Paula and Fillmore to the western part of the county. And so you did a great job, and that is a great service you have provided for the whole county, because I was on the last siting committee. And let me tell you, it doesn't matter where you place a landfill or where you even say, that would be a good place. You're going to get all the neighbors coming in and giving you all the reasons. So once you've got it cited, and don't forget, when that one canyon is filled, you could go back, Mr. Kildee, if you're still around. It's going to take a long time to fill that canyon. And you own the 100 acres at the base, and there is another, is it Diamond Canyon, that goes up to the west of that canyon, and that is the other place that we looked at for after the current Toland Road landfill. So anyway, good job on that. The meetings I attended were a city selection committee on the 12th, the CASA Federal Legislative Committee on the 17th, the CASA State Legislative Committee on the 19th, and I'm very glad I didn't have to attend the Airport Authority meeting or the Fox Canyon meeting. I've spent enough time on those, so I'm happy you people have taken all that over. I want to talk a little more about something that Mr. Kildee brought up much earlier in the meeting. And that was Camarillo's being named 15th safest city in the state of California. And I think, and for people who aren't aware, there are something like 460 cities, maybe more than that, in the state of California. So to be 15th safest, I think, is really something. And it's notable that 3 of the top 15 safest cities in the state of California received contract for police services from the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. And I think that says a lot for the type of service that the Ventura County Sheriff's Department provides for its contract cities. So good job, guys. And with that, I believe we have no further business, so this meeting is adjourned.